What is going on, guys? Today I'm going to be bringing you a review of the new Revolution at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Just to be clear, before I start the review, I only was able to ride the Christmas themed version of the new Revolution. Since I just went there recently, I didn't have the original version. However, I can still give a review on VR roller coasters as a whole and how I really feel about them. They are kind of new, and I found that some people have a lot of fun with them. Other people don't like them too much and they say they're really bad. And I got to ride one now, so I'll definitely be giving my review on it right now. So let's start the review. So the new Revolution used to be an old ride just called the Revolution. It was of course themed to the American Revolution. It had and still has a color scheme of white and blue, and the trains are red with stars on the side. They recently just redid the ride and put new trains on them, and they changed back the ride to having lap bar restraints instead of over the shoulder ones. And a lot of people have liked that since it is less painful of a ride. However, they also added the new VR to the ride, and this is where a lot of people started to dislike the ride, in my opinion. This is where I kind of started to dislike the ride. First off, the lines are tremendously long. I can't even tell you how bad the operations are. It has to be 5 minutes plus on each dispatch of the coaster, to be completely honest. It is that bad. Half of the headsets don't work the first time. They have to show people how to work all the headsets, and they have to check everyone to make sure it's working, as I just mentioned. Half of them usually aren't. And on top of it, the headsets, to be honest, were very uncomfortable. The padding on mine were coming off already. If you can call it a headset, I guess, because it's really just a phone put into a VR case, so it's not a true headset technically. I was able to get a fast pass in the park for that day, so I was able to cut through the line and get on pretty quickly. But if you're going to wait in the normal line for this ride, it's going to be upwards of an hour. Even on a non-crowded day, it's just the operations are just so bad on the ride. That's in VR coasters in general, but this one just seems to be really bad, even compared to the other ones I've seen or heard about. However, I've not been on any other VR coaster, so I can't really make a judgment on that. So once you get into the seat, you put on your VR headset, you make sure it's working. You have to adjust it on the headset. There's a little dial that adjusts it to your eyes to make it, because once you put on, to make it not blurry, because once you put the headset on first, odds are it's going to be blurry because it's adjusted to the other person's eyesight. So you do have to turn a dial, but it fixes pretty quickly and becomes pretty clear. What I did notice was in the VR, when you move forward or backwards, the whole area kind of moves with you, which is a little bit uncomfortable while you're standing still. But once you're on the ride, it's not really that big of a deal. And plus, since there's no real way of them having a system for tracking the headset for each individual guest, it's not too big of a deal, and I understand how that could be in the headset for some reason, but it doesn't really affect you much, so it's not that big of a deal. The resolution of the VR is not as, I thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was, but it actually wasn't too bad. But the frame rate was pretty awful. I mean, like, there were some times where frame rate would start to skip down at times, and would definitely go below 30 FPS for sure. For video games even, it's a standard of like 90 frames per second to even play VR. That's the general standard. But there were some parts in the ride where the frame rate just seriously tanked. And when the frame rate tanks in VR, it just isn't very comfortable at all. Especially for people who get nauseous pretty easily. They definitely won't have that good of a time when the frame rate starts to drop like that. Another thing that also really diminished the ride experience for me was that there was no sound on the VR, which really took away the immersiveness of it all. Because I could see this whole world around me. It was the Christmas themed edition, so there was this evil elf kind of chasing us through a town or something like that. I can't really remember, but it looked like actually looked like a pretty cool scene, but it wasn't really immersive at all because there was no sound to it. It was just kind of like watching a TV. And it is VR, so it is still unique because of that, but there's just no sound. It makes it a lot less immersive. Once I got on the ride itself, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, hearing all the really bad reviews about VR coasters. However, I do think it definitely should be and could be better. Because VR in general is immersive, even if there is laggy frame rates in it, and if it's not the best graphics, which I don't know if I mentioned this, but the graphics aren't too good. The resolutions in the headset aren't that bad. You don't see too many pixels, but the graphics in general are just not that good in the scenes that they show. So basically what I'm trying to say is VR in general is immersive, so if you go on this ride and you say it's immersive so it's good, that's not really saying much because all VR is immersive. What I'm trying to say is all VR in general is going to feel fun. However, I've used other lot higher quality headsets that are real VR headsets, which probably diminish my ride experience a little bit, knowing that I've experienced better VR before. But the way they have the virtual reality set up just isn't really comparable to the best virtual reality out there. And you really can't expect it to be, considering that the best VR out there right now requires like tracking stations that have to be mounted on top of the walls of the room you're playing in and stuff like that. It requires a lot of setup for each individual person that does it. So it is very hard to implement on a roller coaster. However, I think they could have done a better job. First, they really shouldn't be using Samsung phones for the VR. I think they really should have had a new virtual headset made for roller coasters in VR. Because a phone really isn't that powerful of a device, and VR takes a lot of computer power to run in general. And while it does work to an extent, it just doesn't work in its best potential of what it could be. And plus, I mean, they have these things running on Samsung Galaxy S7, so you never want to be riding one day and just all of a sudden you feel your headset heating up. And in all seriousness and all jokes aside, though, they really should not be having these being run on phones. I really think they should have gotten a special device made for roller coasters in virtual reality, just because it'll provide a better experience for the riders. If they were to make a better device that's only made or specifically made for this type of virtual reality experience on roller coasters, they could probably do a lot with it. I think they could make a machine that can put more power into the VR, or that has more processing power to create a better VR experience where there's a lot less lagging and better graphics as a result also. But my point is they really should not be running these on phones. A phone just, I think in general, isn't a powerful enough device to run VR to the extent it's wanted on a roller coaster, with the tracking needed, the graphics people want to experience on the roller coaster, and the frame rate needed as well while the coaster is moving, just to keep it from lagging and keep it from making people nauseous. And most of these VR rides have to have a pretty big budget in general, since they have to create these 3D scenes that people need to ride through on the roller coaster and need to sync up. So I think if like Disney or Universal or another bigger theme park corporation, I think SeaWorld is starting with the Kraken at SeaWorld Orlando putting VR. I'm not sure how they're going to do it. But I think if one of these bigger companies was able to implement VR in their coasters, or if they do, that maybe they'll look into creating a specific machine for us, not using just Samsung phones. And I think that'll benefit them more, since they do have a bigger budget in these types of projects. So I think when bigger companies start to implement VR on theme park rides, that they'll probably do a much better job, and they might even create a specific headset for the ride itself, which will overall just increase the quality of the virtual reality if they build the machine right and make it work on the ride. So my overall review is that it was a fun ride in general, even though the VR wasn't the best and there was no sound. But that comes with VR in general. Almost all VR is going to be fun for people to watch. However, while I was on the ride, I did hear some people behind me literally saying that that was the worst ride they've been on, which isn't very encouraging, of course, but I could see where they're coming from. The VR isn't very good, and I'm sure every headset has a different experience, because some have probably been more used than others. Some have probably been taking a much longer break from use to use, and some are probably older as well. My overall review is it's okay right now. It's not near at its best what I believe it can be. Virtual reality roller coasters are just not really there yet where they can be a very fun and enjoyable experience for all riders. However, I do think it is a good step into the future for theme park rides in general. If they start to figure out how to implement this better in the rides, then I think it does have some serious potential and could make for some really fun revamped or even some new virtual reality roller coasters or rides. If you have like an hour and a half of time at the park still after you've ridden everything, which I highly doubt, since it's Magic Mountain, they have tons of coasters. I think the most out of any park. I'm not sure if it's any park in the world, but it's definitely a very big park. So if you have an hour and a half of time at the park after you've been on all the other rides first, then I would recommend going on it just because you're there and you have the opportunity to try out the ride. However, you're not really missing much if you're not gonna make it on this ride. The VR is okay, it's not the best, and odds are you'll have much more fun on another ride in the park. So thank you so much for watching. I make theme park videos on this channel pretty consistently, like theme park content on regular theme park videos like this, or on theme park simulators like Planet Coaster or No Limits 2. Be sure to subscribe for all that content. And be sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you like roller coasters or Magic Mountain in general, Six Flags Magic Mountain. And be sure to keep up to date with this channel if you want to see more theme park videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.